conversation with Elon Musk and Peter Diamondis about the launch of X Prize Carbon Removal, Musk Foundation Carbon X Prize Removal. This is DTV10, DTV10.com.
The X Prize Foundation runs incredible large-scale competitions around the world that set very clear, measurable, objective goals.
Competitions and prizes can actually bring innovation to solve not just any problem, but really big, challenging problems.
We don't care who you are or where you come from. If you're able to accomplish this task, you win. We're leveraging the genius of folks from all over the world.
The tinkers, the entrepreneurs, the engineers.
We're looking for something that is audacious and achievable.
Problems that the markets have failed to solve.
We're about setting a high bar. We want to set a goal for people that's inspiring. It's also hard.
So no matter what challenge you want to solve, join us on this journey. Just don't be satisfied doing nothing. Welcome everybody. Welcome to a special live stream on Earth Day.
Here we are on Earth.
On Earth in a beautiful
Surrounded by
nature.
nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing better for 21 Earth Day.
Yeah.
Here to talk about the launch of the largest prize ever, $100 million X Prize for carbon capture, and here with a very special guest, probably one of the greatest innovators and engineer of our time, the CEO of Tesla, of SpaceX, and a bunch of other companies, and someone I'm proud to call a friend. Elon.
Hey, Peter.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. It's the perfect setting for our conversation today.
Yeah. We've known each other for a long time now.
Yeah. 21 years, I think. It was like 2000?
Yeah. Whoa. I think it was 2000 in Brazil.
Brazil was
Actually a similarly nice sort of setting.
Yeah, it was the day of his birthday.
Yeah, Florianopolis.
Florianopolis.
Yeah, and you're trying to convince me not to start a rocket company.
I was trying to convince you to fund the original X Prize
Well,
before I met Anusha.
Yes, but you also really advised me not to start a rocket company because I'd lose all my money, which I thought you were probably right. So I thought a 10% chance of success, but anyway, seems to have worked out.
I'm sure glad you didn't. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So we're going to talk a little bit about the rules, try and encourage teams around the world to register for this thing.
Yeah.
As many innovators, students talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is basically to do something that have it be sort of interesting, fun, and ultimately useful, and to spur creative ideas for what is actually the smartest way to take the trillions of tons of carbon that we've removed from the ground and will remove from the ground, from deep underground, and we've placed that carbon in the atmosphere and oceans. Which obviously changes the chemical constituency of the surface of the Earth.
Yeah.
I should sort of measure my statements in that I think the Earth. I don't think we're currently doomed. To be clear, it's very important. Very importantly, there are people on all parts of the spectrum ranging from nothing to worry about, CO2 just makes things better, to we're doomed and there's nothing you can do about it. I am somewhere in the middle. So my concern with CO2 is not kind of where we are today, or even the current rate of carbon generation, but really if carbon generation keeps accelerating and we keep getting and if we keep going and if we're complacent, then I think we could. There's some risk of sort of non-linear climate change. Thus far we've seen the CO2 possibility be fairly linear on our time scale, although it looks very exponential on geologic time scale. But there are certain potential nonlinear events like if we raise the temperature to the point where we melt the Siberian traps or something like that.
And methane escapes, yeah.
Yeah, there's just a massive amount of sort of frozen dead plant animal matter in Siberia. There's potentially trapped gases deep in the ocean. If the ocean warms,
Yeah.
that could be released. So, these are just risks that are not wise to take. And since we know that long term we're going to have renewable energy anyway, because we'll run out of oil and gas. It's not going to last forever. So we know where this ends up. This has to end up with renewable, sustainable energy. It's tautological. It's really just a question of, do we try to get there sooner or later? And we should try to get there sooner. It's obvious. Why run the? How long do you want to run this experiment?
Yeah. It's also true that even if we stop CO2 production, that's probably still not enough. That we do need mechanisms for extraction of CO2 from the atmosphere and oceans that don't exist right now.
I said I am. People sometimes think I'm sort of like I'm kind of in the middle of the spectrum. I think if we stop CO2 production today, which obviously we cannot do without civilization coming to a grinding halt, and mass starvation and all sorts of terrible things happening. So we cannot stop CO2 generation today, but I think at the the sort of 400, possibly even 500 ppm level, I think it's probably okay. But if as the world industrializes and sort of 8 billion people get to 9 billion people, have a lot more industrial output per person, you could see at what might be okay, sort of 400 or 500 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere might become quite dire at 1,000.
Yeah.
And the trend is certainly in that direction if you don't do anything about it. So that's why I think it's just probably an unwise experiment to run. Even if you think that this is why I think it should be a compelling argument to even those who would assign a low probability to increased CO2 causing problems. Like, let's say you think it's 99.9% likely that that adding all the CO2 to the ocean's atmosphere is going to be fine. So you're saying there's a 0.1% chance of disaster. Well, there's only one. So right now we're only at one plant. Well, even a 0.1% chance of disaster, why run that risk? That's crazy. So I think what's likely to play out is that we will continue to add a lot more CO2 to the ocean's atmosphere, and also ocean acidification, as you know, is also an issue. You don't want to sort of add carbonic acid to the oceans and change the pH level because it destroys reefs and all that. So
Which it's actively doing right now as we're watching.
yeah, exactly. Yes. So this is the problem.
Now, I remember when I first met you, Elon, it was about 2000, and I remember you had two massively transformative missions. It was one making humanity multi-planetary, and the second was bringing us to a sustainable economy.
Yeah.
A sustainable energy economy.
Right, exactly.
And I think you've done pretty damn good. Are you happy with the progress you've made?
Yeah, I think it's hard to complain. The outcome so far has been great. Although obviously we've not yet sent anyone to Mars, and hopefully we'll in the future. And in fact, just a few days ago, or late last week, I guess, NASA awarded SpaceX
Awesome, $2.9 billion for the next lunar lander.
Yeah, so a SpaceX craft will be the next craft to put humans on Moon. I believe the first human will be a woman actually this time.
Yes.
So this is great.
Yeah.
But of course we have to actually do it. And then tomorrow we've got our third astronaut launch.
Before we dive into the carbon removal rules and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a very bad part of me because our rockets do produce carbon. You're like, oh, what a hypocrite.
Sure.
He's obviously just in for the money.
But let's talk about the crew tube.
But I also address this. Are you being a hypocrite by launching rockets that produce carbon? But here's the problem is right now there's really no way to get around the physics of a rocket. So I think it's important for the long-term uh, preservation and ultimately the expansion and extension of the scope and scale of consciousness and the long-term probability of survival of humanity and life as we know it. We must become a multi-planet species. Because there are all these risks that we can't control.
Existential risks,
Well,
asteroid strikes,
yeah. There's like
super volcanoes.
we could do it, and we have World War III or something. There's like I'm optimistic about the future, but you can also say like, okay, well, so how long do you think civilization will last before there's a catastrophic event? If you say infinity, this is not correct.
Yes.
Okay. This is not. History does not suggest that. History just suggests we do dumb things to civilizations all the time. And this is the ancient Egyptians, ancient Romans. Where are they now? Witness to the research. Where are they now? So
DTV10.
Babylonians, Sumerians, you name it. So there's been many civilizations that have risen and fallen, and we've got to preserve. We've got to become multi-planetary, and right now the only way to do that is with rockets that do burn fuel. But we do have a long-term plan for sustainability of even rocket flights by generating propellant using sustainable energy, wind and solar, to generate, starting first with liquid oxygen. And for our Starship vehicle, it's almost 80% liquid oxygen and 20% liquid methane. The oxygen, it's obviously pretty easy to create that. You just use wind and solar electricity and do air separator, because you've got the oxygen already in there. The plants are making the oxygen, so you can just use electricity, basically renewable electricity, to create 80% of the propellant on the rocket. And then for the remaining 20%, you can use the Sabatier process, where you actually take CO2 out of the atmosphere and you combine that with water to create CH4 and more O2.
Yep.
And that's in fact what we would do on Mars.
Sure.
To generate propellant.
Sure.
So there's a long-term plan for sustainable generation of propellant for the rockets. I do want to emphasize that. And if there's some other way to do that now, we certainly would.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to sort of address this apparent inconsistency in if generating carbon is bad, why are you doing that with rockets?
Yeah. And listen, I think it's a moral imperative for the human race to be able to move off while we have the opportunity. Everything we know is right here.
And just because it's not just one of the other criticisms. Someone feels like, oh, is this some escape hatch for rich people? No, they think it's like, so. Going to Mars reads like that ad for Shackleton going to the Antarctic. It's dangerous. It's uncomfortable. It's a long journey. You might not, come back alive. But it's a glorious adventure, and it'll be an amazing experience.
And your name will go in history.
Yes, you might not. It's going to be quite cool, and we probably won't have good food, and all these things, So if an arduous and dangerous journey where you may not come back alive, but it's a glorious adventure, sounds appealing.
And
Mars
you
is the
still,
place.
and you
That's
still have
that's the
thousands of volunteers, if not millions of volunteers, who would want to go.
I mean, honestly, a bunch of people probably will die at the beginning. It's tough to go there.
We're an exploring species.
Yeah, exactly. We don't make anyone go. So it's volunteers only.
You have a Dragon capsule on the pad. Crew 2 is nominally, you still go for launch tomorrow?
Yeah.
Awesome. You want to just spend 2 minutes talking about the Crew 2 mission?
Yeah, so we've got hopefully a great mission planned for tomorrow. This will be our third flight of people to the space station. We had a test mission with 2 astronauts, then the first sort of operational mission with 4. This is our second operational mission with 4. There's international crew, great crew. I was just looking online. They're sort of, picking their sort of. Hopefully not final meal, but they can pick whatever their favorite food is, from their country, and so I'm actually heading over there tonight just to wish them well.
I was out at Pad 39A to see the stack yesterday. A couple of things. One, Pad 39A, historic.
Yeah, this is where people went to the moon.
Yeah, Apollo 11.
From that pad.
From that pad, the first space shuttle launch back in '81, STS-1.
Yep.
And so that's it's a lot of like karmic responsibility to be operating.
Yeah,
from
it's
there.
like Times Square, the Times
Wow.
Square of launch pads.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And the first stage has a beautiful patina on it.
It's this is, yeah, it's a reused stage. So when the stages come back, they kind of get scorched.
Yeah.
So the black Sonic building is that sort of something? No, it got scorched from re-entry.
Your team said they used to wipe it off to clean it, and then it's just like, why bother?
It's kind of hard to wipe off. It doesn't wipe off easily.
Yeah.
It's kind of like baked on there.
And it's
You
interesting.
kind of have to repaint it, really.
We were having a discussion about, is it safer to use a stage that's flown already versus a new stage?
Yeah, so I think what we'd say is like flight proven.
Flight proven, yes.
Yeah. So
like
I mean, if this was an airplane, do you want to be on the first flight of that airplane when it comes out of the factory, or do you want to be on a later flight? I'd say let somebody, let the test pilots do their thing before you fly a plane. So you flying a plane, you want to see that plane is flown a few times before you get it. I think.
Yeah.
So I think it should be on balance better. And then we'll also be reflying the spacecraft.
The Dragon, yeah.
The Dragon spacecraft.
Beautiful.
So we're trying to get reusability is obviously very important. In many areas, so reusability is important. Reusability in rockets is important.
I remember being in Hawthorne, seeing your Falcon 1 there, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
It's come.
There's some funny pictures of basically the sort of SpaceX as a kind of like a kindergartner. And me being like 20 years younger. We're just in this tiny little warehouse in El Segundo.
Yeah, I remember well.
Yeah.
Before we go to jump into the guidelines, one last question, update on Starship, because that's what, Starship's taking us to the moon, taking us to Mars. It is audacious. Can you compare it to the Apollo? Compare it to the Apollo vehicle, Saturn V, for a comparison for a second, for folks to know, get a sense of it.
Sure. Well, I think the thing that's least obvious from when it's on the ground, from the video and the pictures, is the size of it. So it's going to be the largest flying object ever. So it'll be twice the thrust and weight of the Saturn V.
Amazing.
So that's just for a second, and taller. Including the launch escape tower. So it's a very tall rocket. 120 meters tall.
And because it's so wide,
yeah.
the proportions are obscure that fact, how big it is.
Yeah, you can see in some of the pictures that have been released where it's landing on the moon, and the people look like ants. It's a big rocket. This rocket is capable of at least 100 tons and probably closer to 200 tons of useful payload to the surface of the moon. So we're designed to be far in excess of NASA's requirements.
Yeah.
And so it's really intended to be something that that can enable a permanently occupied base on the moon. So we're going to put obviously a permanently occupied base in Antarctica, and it would be great to have one on the moon as well.
Yeah.
And you can do I think a lot more research if you have the scientists actually there. And we can have some very powerful telescopes.
The moon. There's some great sayings from Robert Heinlein that said if God had wanted humanity to have space flight, they would she would have given us a moon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great staging place.
Exactly. It's just off the coast. Mars is much further.
One last question.
But I think more important than the size of Starship is the fact that it is intended to be fully and rapidly reusable.
Yeah.
So this is the fundamental holy grail breakthrough needed for access to space. To make humanity a true spacefaring civilization, we must have a fully and rapidly reusable rocket. Now we've made some progress in that direction with Falcon 9, where the booster is reusable and the Dragon spacecraft upper portion is reusable, but the second stage is not reusable, and I would say right now I would not say the Falcon booster spacecraft and fairing they're not rapidly reusable. It takes a fair bit of effort, much less effort than the space shuttle took.
Yeah.
But
that was a turnaround every year or so.
Yeah, exactly. That and it took like a year to turn them around. We're getting it down down to a few months, basically, and soon, like probably under a month to turn around a booster. Landing out to sea and then having to bring it back and then sort of taking a month or so to get ready for launch is still what we call it rapid by aircraft standards. Whereas Starship is intended to be both fully and rapidly useful. So the booster comes right back to the launch pad. Literally is caught by the launch tower.
Yeah.
So it lands and is actually caught by launch tower arms. That's aspirationally. I mean,
that looks like science fiction.
It's guaranteed. So the booster it comes back about 6 or 7 minutes later as caught. So it's right there and then caught by launch tower arms and placed right back onto the launch stand. And then the ship is. I actually want the ship also to be caught by the launch tower. Now the ship it takes at least 90 minutes to orbit the Earth.
Yeah.
We may take more than one. It may take 3 or 4 orbits to get the ground track realigned with the
Landing zone. Yeah.
landing zone, depending on where you are. But the point is that the ship will come back and land right by the tower and be placed right back on. And so,
Like a 767, just refuel and go.
It's intended to be such that the booster can be used, I don't know, a dozen times a day, and the ship could be basically every couple hours, and that's mostly about reloading propellant and mounting the ship, and then the ship could probably be used, probably in theory every 3 hours if you can make the ground track match. But certainly every, say, 6 to 9 hours. We'll call it twice a day for the ship. And we'll make more ships than there are boosters. So, and I think once we have the floating space platforms, we can put the position them such that the ship can come back in a single orbit.
Amazing.
So then it could be like, let's say you get 3 ship launches per day, that's 1,000 flights a year. Each with hundreds to 150 tons of
Now we're talking a real space program. Yeah. Let's go to the questions on the carbon removal prize. We'll be going to your questions in Twitter in about 20 minutes, 15-20 minutes. So Elon, this is the largest prize ever, largest incentive prize ever, and I would argue for one of the most largest civilization scale challenges we have.
Sure.
And we'll get into the rules in a second so that folks who are looking at creating teams can understand why we created those rules. But why did you fund this? Let's start with the why there.
Yeah, I think I wanted to spur ideas and thinking about the long-term need to capture carbon. I think this is one of those things that's going to take a while to figure out what the right solution is.
Mm-hmm.
And especially to figure out what the best economics are for CO2 removal, and all the think through all the consequences. You don't want the cure to be worse than the disease.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, well, just plant a bunch of trees. I'm like, that's not so easy. Like
a trillion trees.
Sure, exactly. And then you're gonna okay, well, how you get fertilizer, you're gonna water them. Where's the water gonna come from? What habitat are you potentially destroying where the trees used to be? It's not just a no-brainer to just go plant a bunch.
But it's not to say that's not a good viable option.
We should plant some trees. I'm in favor of planting trees. It's just not a question of like, okay, there are like vast sections of like the Sahara Desert or some large barren areas, very dry areas in the U.S. Where you could plant a lot of trees, but you're going to need a lot of water.
Yeah.
And you're going to need you're going to have to cultivate them. It's not like you don't just throw some seeds in the ground.
We'll drop them from orbit.
Yeah, and I mean, so just I think it'd be good to sort of kind of frame the debate and understand, okay, what things are really going to move the needle, how much are they going to move the needle. If we're talking about getting tens or hundreds of billions of tons of carbon, in what form will that carbon be?
Yeah.
Will it be stable over time? And like I said, what is it going to cost humanity to do? However it's paid for, what is it going to cost? What's the thing that's going to take the be most affordable.
Mhm.
I think there are a lot of open questions on this.
There are. Let me chunk the rules for those listening, and you and your team, amazing team, and Marcus Extravor and Xenia Tata and their team work really well together. So the first thing is that for a team to win this, so we'll talk about the prize amounts and so forth, they've got to actually build something that works and demonstrate something that can extract 1,000 tons per year, a kiloton of carbon per year as a demo scale model.
Yeah, I think, by the way, we're very much open to adjusting the rules, to be clear to everyone, like meaning, if things aren't working or for whatever reason, we need to adjust rules, we'll adjust rules. The fundamental goal is to have spent 100 million, and actually it'll be probably like 120 million or whatever with, cost of managing the prize and everything. So it'll be, at the end of the day, probably something like $120 million spent. And hopefully that's spent well and usefully, and that what comes out of it is something that matters to the future. So that's the goal, to be clear. And so if people have ideas for adjusting the rules.
We're going down as guidelines,
Yeah.
and we're going to have, I think, till mid-May for get public feedback. Tell us if we missed something.
Right.
We will turn them from guidelines to rules once we get really feedback. And we've gone out to so many of the amazing climate scientists out there.
Yeah.
And it's unless the rules need to be valid for the 4 years of this prize duration.
Yeah. So we're super open to critical feedback. Don't hesitate to yell and say, hey, this is how it should be different in some way or whatever. The goal is just to let's have it be a useful exercise and have people have a good time trying to figure out this problem. I think it's it's a fun problem to try to work on, we just want it to be useful at the end of the day, and have it not be sort of just an academic exercise or something that never amounts to anything.
I think one of the things that you've said and I've said is, everything works on PowerPoint.
Everything works in PowerPoint. That's exactly. You can have a PowerPoint presentation for a teleportation system to the Andromeda Galaxy, and even have a simulation of look, here we are, boom, you're according to the slide, you're now teleported to Andromeda. But it doesn't actually work.
So to win this prize, a team actually during the 4 years has to build something that can at minimum pull out 1,000 tons of carbon per year.
Yeah.
So that they can show us that.
Do they have to? Do they have to pull out 1,000 tons, or just show that the rate it works?
No, they have to pull out
like a literal 1,000 tons. We'll weigh it.
We're
Put it on scale.
and we're gonna maybe calculate it to be 1,000 tons.
Okay.
But the rate at which they'll have to run it for a year to get 1,000 tons out. But
if they run it for a month, that's okay.
Probably it's okay.
Okay.
All right.
And I mean, in a month they have 100 tons, and it needs to fit on our weighing machine or something. I don't get weighed somehow.
We'll use
How do
one
we
of
know?
your ships.
And we'll go down the shipyard on it.
And part of the actual physically doing it is that they have enough data to calculate costs, which are going to be important. But we're not looking for theory; we're looking for practice. And you know how hard it is to make something real.
It's very hard to make something real. In my view, prototypes are trivial, and production is hard.
Yeah.
And there's the generally people think it's the prototype that is the hard thing. Prototypes are, well, I mean, obviously you're going to have that 1% of inspiration, but as the saying goes, it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
Yeah.
Ideas are plentiful. Actually getting it done is very hard. You could say, for example, what about the idea of going to the moon? It's easy. Going to the moon is hard. So that's why it's not the idea, man.
Yeah. There's plenty of ideas out there.
Yeah, it's like.
All right. So the second thing.
Why I'm going to go to the moon? I can do it. Okay.
See you there.
Yeah.
The second thing is, and this is a term that you use first, is that the teams have to be able to calculate the fully considered costs of pulling out the CO2.
Sure.
And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think fully considered cost actually just means that if there are, you want to look at both the benefits and the cost actually. So if in sequestering carbon, removing it from the atmosphere or oceans, has some perhaps some environmental impact, which might be small, but it's not negative. That certainly needs to be taken into account. silicon if what's done is in extracting carbon is a useful product from which you can generate revenue, then that should count too.
Right.
So I don't know, just sort of say, for argument's sake, like let's say you could create, construction material, like
For cement.
Cement.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
Cement.
I'll talk about that
Cement
later.
or some kind of useful rocks that are useful, or sand, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Something that's useful for construction. Then you could say, okay, well, this is what we could sell it for, and and just fully consider pros and cons, and say, okay, this is what, if we need to pay to have it done in the future, which we probably will have to do, then what's the lowest net cost?
And to be clear, the working teams, what they do has to be net negative, right? It's not a break even. It's not play out 1,000 tons and then emit 1,000 tons. In fact, one of the things we talked about.
Absolutely.
One of the things we
Obviously. Yeah.
One of the things we talked about is
can't be worse than a disease.
Yes. How long do you need to sequester the carbon for us? We had a big debate. You want to share what you came up with there? What the team came up with?
The rate of carbon sequestering is to far exceed the rate at which, say, it is potentially dissolving back into the atmosphere.
And so one of the rules is that you have to be able to sequester for at least 100 years, right? So we set a target. There's nothing forever.
Yeah.
A year is not long enough. So we said you have to demonstrate that your methodology is going to contain the CO2 in some fashion for 100 years at least.
Yeah, maybe there's a small amount that is lost. Maybe it's not perfect. Yeah. I think we probably don't want to set it to 100% for 100 years. But if it's like 90% for 100 years, that's probably okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it just needs to be something that if we scaled it up, would it work?
Yeah, and that's the third part.
Obviously.
That's the third part.
That's common sense test, really.
Yes, and the hardest thing is that the winning team has to prove to our judges that their approach can actually scale to a gigaton level. Otherwise, it's not going to be useful.
Right. Exactly. It can't be niche. Yeah. It can't be inherently niche.
And if anybody knows about scaling up, I think you do.
Scaling is hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer is here, really. But I think if a lot of smart people work on this, there could be some really creative solutions.
Something generally useful for the world in that regard.
Absolutely. And I think just because like looking for pragmatic solutions, it doesn't need to be perfect. But it's got to be something that's just fundamentally, if we scaled it up, would it work? And that's it.
So let's talk about the prizes that are up for grabs. First place is going to be 50 million.
Yeah.
Which is significant. Our hope is that it's going to attract enough cognitive surplus out there to focus in on this.
Yeah.
30 million split between sort of a second, third, and fourth place prize. And one of the things that you and your team put forward is maybe it might be split into different categories, right? Different approaches.
Yeah, I mean, we want to reward people who have done great work.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, I'm open to increasing the prize size too over time. So if it turns out like, hey, somebody really kicked ass, and somehow there's not a prize for them, I'll add some more to the prize.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. I want somebody to have like spent massive blood, sweat, and tears, have done something useful, and get nothing for it. That would be pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, but I think also, this somebody's going to probably get a company out of this, because I think this will be a need long term, and so this is kind of like, you can also think of it as like free venture money.
Yeah. Non-dilutive venture capital.
Yeah.
And
free money for a company.
And hopefully we're also creating a massive marketplace and proving to people that there's a there here.
Yeah.
So 50 million for the first, 30 million split among second, third, and fourth. In the next year, we're taking $15 million and distributing $1 million to the top 15 teams that appear to be making the most progress, the most real.
Just giving some people some seed money, basically. Yeah.
And then you've set aside 5 million for student teams.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
important. You want to talk about student teams? I know you're passionate about that.
Yeah. We've done a lot of student competitions, for example, Hyperloop, just trying to spur ideas in advanced transportation. And it's really just basically electric car and a vacuum tube, to be precise. I mean, and we've had several of them, the last Hyperloop competition, I actually got like I think halfway through the speed of sound. So yeah, pretty impressive. And
That was Elon Musk for the X Prize. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to X Prize for future positive podcasts for more content. X Prize gives a lot of grants out, millions of dollars for coming up on nice science projects that can help people. So thank you for watching.